Hi there, and thank you for your interest in Mission Control. In this deep dive demo video, we're going to be taking a real detailed look at all of the key features that we have within Mission Control. First of all, I'm just going to run through a few slides with you to give you some high-level understanding of all the key features that we have within Mission Control. So first of all, Mission Control is built natively on the Salesforce platform. So there's a number of benefits in using a native application. So for example, the way you can customize Salesforce, you can also customize Mission Control. That means you can easily add in your own custom fields, you can modify page layouts, you can also build out your own business logic with things like validation rules, workflow rules, process builders, and so on. Additional benefits include if you need to do any analysis on your project data, you can do that using the standard Salesforce reporting and dashboard tools. You can also access your mission control data via the Salesforce mobile app. Being built natively on the Salesforce platform means there's no integration required because everything is contained inside your instance of Salesforce. And getting mission control installed and set up is a really quick process. It literally takes a couple of minutes to install from the App Exchange, and everything you'll see in this demo literally works out of the box. So being built on the platform, it's going to feel like a familiar interface given that it's built on the Salesforce framework. And we do support both Salesforce Classic and Lightning Experience. And while this demo is delivered in Lightning Experience, all of the features you'll see are available inside Salesforce Classic as well. So in terms of licensing, you do need a Salesforce license in order to have a mission control license. And what we've got listed here are all of the different Salesforce license types that you can add mission control on top of. So what I'm going to do here is just pull onto screen all of the key objects that we have in Mission Control. So just to be clear, object is a term that Salesforce uses to describe a table in the database. So I'm going to be basically pulling onto screen all of the tables available within Mission Control. So we'll talk about the project in a moment, but over on the left we have the role. Now the role is a record for an individual person that can be assigned as a resource on a project. And we give you some flexibility around who can have a role. So you can link a role to a Salesforce user. Alternatively, you can link it to a Salesforce contact. So putting that into context, let's say you've got Mission Control installed in your org. You have a Salesforce user record, and your role links to your Salesforce user. Now, I might be your customer and you need to assign ownership of certain things to me on the project, but you don't want to have to go to the expense of providing me with a license. So what you can do is actually create a role and link it to the contact record that you have for me inside inside Salesforce, and that will allow you to assign ownership of actions to me. Now, it won't give me any access to the system, but there are various email notifications that I can receive as well. Now, underneath each role, you can build out a profile for each person. So what skills are they capable of doing? What teams are they a member of? And what holidays have they got coming up, whether that's annual leave, sick leave, public holidays, and so on. Now, all of those attributes come in handy when we're trying to resource a new project. We can filter down and say, well, I need someone on this team. I've got to make sure that they've got these skills, and taking into account any existing work plus any upcoming holidays, I can make sure I'm going to be assigning the most relevant person. So at the project level, we track things like the project budget. We can also track two lots of financials. We can track what we call the billing rate and the cost rate. So the billing rate is what we're charging our customer to do the work. The cost rate is what we're paying our people to do the work for us. So by tracking both of those, we're obviously able to track the profit and loss of the project as well. Underneath the project, we have our milestones. So think of the milestone as a phase or a stage or a sprint within the project. And within each milestone, you can build out your actions. Now, the actions are the individual tasks that need to be delivered. And you'll see here, the action will be assigned to an owner. You'll be specifying when that needs to start and finish and how much effort you're expecting that to require to be delivered. Now, whilst the action can only have one owner, you can pull in what we call contributors. So contributors are additional people that will be supporting the action owner in delivering that item. We also have the ability to build out a checklist. So checklist items are a set of subtasks that sit underneath the action, simply to compile a to-do list of the things that you need to tick off. And we also have the ability to record our time as well. So obviously by logging our time, that rolls up to the action, milestone, and project and gives us the ability to do a comparison between our scheduled effort and our actual effort. So we can see whether we delivered more or less efficiently than we thought we would. Additional objects sitting underneath the project, we have the ability to keep track of expenses we're incurring. We can also keep a log of any risks or issues we're concerned about, as well as increasing or decreasing the project budget based on change requests. If you need to, you can also generate invoices relating to your project. So those invoices can have tax rates applied. They can have multiple line items. You can issue a PDF of the invoice to your customer, and you can record the payment back in as well. So then sitting above the project, we have what we call our program. So ultimately a program comprises of multiple projects. Underneath a program, you can also be capturing high-level requirements. And within those requirements, you can be documenting the detailed user stories. So some of the key features that we're going to be taking a look at during this detailed demo, we have what we call our console. So the console gives you quick launch access to all of the key parts of mission control. So it really serves as a gateway through to the rest of the system. The project overview is a page that gives you 360-degree visibility of one particular project. The whiteboard is a Kanban interface. It displays all of our actions as if there were sticky notes stuck to a whiteboard in the office. And what we're able to do is drag and drop those from one column to the next to record progress. We can do things like collaborating with colleagues on chatter. We can mark off our checklist items, as well as logging time on the progress we've made as well. The scheduler is our resource planning tool. So down the left-hand side, we'll see a list of people. Across the page, we see a timeline where we can look at anything from 1 to 12 weeks. We can see all of the work that's been allocated to each person, plus any upcoming holidays. And we can also jump into this hours view, which gives us a summary of how that work's been distributed. So we can quickly see any areas where we may have over-allocated someone and we have a bottleneck that we need to address. The Gantt chart visualizes the project timeline. Now, the Gantt chart is fully interactive. You're able to drag and drop to reschedule. You can create dependencies, view your critical path. You can do a comparison between your actual dates and your original baseline dates. You also have the ability to export the Gantt chart as a PDF should you want to share that with external stakeholders. The timesheet is one of many ways of logging time in mission control. So the timesheet loads up for an individual person for a particular week, and it lists everything that's been assigned for that person, whether they're the action owner or a contributor, and they can log time across each day of the week, also submitting notes. The Create Actions and the Assignment Wizard are pages that come together to provide you with an efficient way of building out the detail of a new project. So what we're doing here is creating all of the actions we need. We're specifying billable and non-billable effort when we're looking to get that done. And using the Resource Assignment Wizard, we can find the relevant people that are capable of doing the work for us. So we can filter down based on team membership, skill set, skill proficiency. We see a list of everyone that matches that criteria, and we can view their real-time work allocation and then drag them down to be the action owner or a contributor. Now, we also have the ability to clone existing projects. So think of this as building a template and then cloning that template. So if you have a fairly repeatable process that you go through from one project to another, you don't have to build out a brand new project each time. You can make a copy of it, and that cloning process lets you take a copy of the project, the milestones, the actions, the checklist items, and the contributors. So going back to that program that sits above a project, we're able to use the program planner to build out a long-term roadmap of work that needs to be delivered. So in this example, I'm building up requirements. So each one of these cards represents a requirement on my program. And within each requirement, I can be documenting the detailed user stories. So once I've built up the backlog of requirements, I can start allocating them to individual projects that are going to deliver the work as part of this overall program. And then once I've allocated requirements to an individual project, I can use the project builder to start mapping that into a project plan. So what you'll see here are my milestones that I've built out onto my project. And over on the right, I've got the backlog of requirements. And I can drag any of these requirements into any one of these milestones, and that will convert the requirement into an action on the project ready to be scheduled. The action pad is a great place to go as an individual person where you can say, right, show me everything that I need to be working on. So for example, I could filter that down and say, show me all actions that aren't yet completed that need to be delivered by me this week. So you get some charts at the top providing you with a summary. You get a working list here of everything you need to do. You can see who else is working with you. You can log your time, and you can get through to the detail. You can collaborate on chatter as well as marking off your checklist items. The issue log is a similar design page. So if you are wanting to track issues on your projects, you can manage those via the issue log. So you can see some summary charts, a working list, and the detail over on the right. The PMO dashboard is going to give you a high-level insight into how your projects are performing to both budget and schedule. And then the revenue recognition page will let you get a forecast of how that revenue is going to be recognized based on the schedule that you've laid out on the project. So you can see your scheduled effort, you can see your actual effort, and you can see your projected. Now you can view the revenue recognition across a number of projects, or you can get in and view it at an individual project level as well. And you're also able to assess how your individual people have been working as well. So the role utilization will show you how many hours per week someone is meant to work, how many hours they have worked, whether that's billable, non-billable, or holidays. You can see their overall utilization, as well as how they've been performing against their own individual billable target. And just final slide just before we jump into the demo, just to let you know, we do offer a 14-day free trial. So you can install Mission Control directly into your production or sandbox org simply by going to the App Exchange, which you can access via this link here. You click the Get It Now button. As I mentioned earlier, within 2 minutes, you're going to have Mission Control installed and ready to use. You'll immediately receive a quick start guide, obviously viewing this demo, but we're more than happy to organize a live demo with you as well. We also have a range of support materials, including user guides, training videos, knowledge-based learning portal, all available from our website. And you can also get in touch with us via that email address. Okay, so let's jump in and get into the detail. Okay, so first of all, we're going to take a look at the console. So the console gives us quick launch access to all of the key parts of Mission Control. And it's broken up into these 4 pads here. So my launch pad is all about creating something new. So from here, I can launch a new project. I can use an existing project as a template and clone that. I can add new programs, roles, teams, and so on. If I click through onto my progress pad, I get access to tools like my whiteboard, the timesheet, expense logger, as well as my action pad. Going through to my management pad, I can get through to pages like the project overview, my program planner, project builder, resource scheduler, PMO dashboard, and role utilization. And then the control pad is where I can go to configure certain settings within the system. So for example, the daily digest is an email that goes out on a daily basis, and we'll take a closer look at that later. But if I want to activate that, it's just a case of ticking the box, setting the time of day that I would like that to go out. Now, each one of these sections controls certain settings within the system that you have the ability to configure. Now, you don't have to give everyone access to the control pad. You can control which person has access to each of these pads. So, for example, our recommendation is that you only give the control pad to your key system administrators, but you can still give access to these pads to all of your other users. Now, what I'm going to do is build out a new project for you to run through that process. So first of all, I'm going to click on the new project button from the launch pad. So I'm going to be building out a website for this business. So I put in a project name, and I need to add a couple of additional milestones. So I'm just going to add 2 extra milestones there. So as part of this website project, I'm first of all going to be designing it, then I'm going to build it, and then I'm going to deliver it. Now that's as much information as I need to put in order to launch my project, but I can put in some additional information. So I can say, well, I know I've got a budget of $6,000. I also want to include a relationship to an opportunity in the system. So associating that to an opportunity inside Salesforce. I can also put in deadlines here as well. So I'm going to say, well, I need to have my design done by Friday. I need to have the build done by next Wednesday, and I want to be going live by the following Friday. And if I want to track my budget at the milestone level, I can do that here as well. Okay, so clicking on launch, that goes away and creates the project. It creates the 3 milestones, drops me onto the project so I can start adding in a bit more detail. So now I've got my project and my milestones created. What I need to do is start just configuring some settings at the project level. So first of all, I'm just going to click on edit and run you through some of the key settings that we've got. So for example, who's going to be the overall project owner? So I'm going to assign that to myself. Who are we doing the work for? So I'm associating the project to an account record I have in Salesforce for my customer. Who is the main contact at that company? So obviously by associating my project to these account contact and opportunity records, if I was to go to the opportunity page in Salesforce, I would be able to see a related list of all of the projects that I've got going on for that customer. So I can put in things like project references. In terms of fields like categories, I can put my own values in there as well. Billing, in terms of my project settings, my billing type, I've got three options. I can use a fixed price plus expenses, or time and materials. I'm going to say in this example, it's fixed price, and I've obviously got my budget of $6,000. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we can track both the billing rate and the cost rate. So the billing rate is what we're charging our customer to do the work. The cost rate is what we're paying our people to do the work for us. And I've got three options for both of those fields. I can use a standard rate. So that means regardless of who's doing the work, we're all being charged out at the same rate. Role-based is picking up the hourly rates from each individual person. Or skill-based is picking up the hourly rate based on a skill a person is using to work on a particular action within the project. I'm going to use standard here, and I'm going to apply a day rate of $1,200 a day. Over on the costs, I've got the same three options, and again, I'm going to keep it simple and say we all get paid $800 a day. So what that shows me is if we do a day's worth of effort, we're going to be generating $1,200 revenue, we're going to be incurring $800 cost. Therefore, I know there's a $400 margin on that effort, and that allows me to track the profit and loss of the project as we go through. We can also track whether we charge the client overtime. If we do, what's the ratio we charge them? Do we pay our staff overtime? If we do, what's the ratio we pay them? And you might want to track non-billable work as well. So obviously project work might not account for 100% of your time. So you can create non-billable projects to track that business as usual activity. So by marking the project off as non-billable, we're obviously not going to be tracking any revenue, but we can still be tracking the costs we're incurring to have those people do that work. Over on the right, we can assign a color to the project. Now, the color doesn't have any function other than when we're looking at the actions on the whiteboard or on the scheduler, they'll be displayed in the color that we've set. If we are wanting to approve people's time, we can have the project owner approve it or the individual person, the line manager, approve it. So if either of these fields are ticked, these people will need to review and approve the time before it gets accounted for on the project. If we want everything to default to approved, we just leave those false. So this whole section is around generating invoices. So what I'm going to do is say I've got a purchase order number from my customer, and I want to apply a tax rate when I'm raising these invoices. Now I can raise invoices in one of three ways. I can do it manually, so self-explanatory, as and when I need to, I'm going to go off and create the invoice. Milestone will be when I deliver a particular milestone on the project, I can automatically raise an invoice. And periodic might be if I'm doing a time and materials project, I can be running invoices on a periodic basis and generating them on any one of these frequencies here. So the example we're going to take a closer look at is the milestone billing. I'm going to set up my payment terms to be 14 days. Over on the right, all of these fields will calculate it automatically for me as and when we're going through generating invoices. If I scroll down, I can also track my expenses. So of my $6,000 budget, I think 500 of that is going to be expenses. As the team start logging those and they get approved, they'll come into the actuals. So if I click on save, I've got my project all configured now, and what I'm ready to do is start building out the detail. Now, one of the most efficient ways of doing that is via this create actions button here. So this will open up a page that gives me one record ready to create an action on my project. But what I can do is say, I know I'm going to need a few more, so I'm going to add those to the list. So my first action is part of the design milestone, and it's going to be to design some wireframes. Now I can put billable and non-billable effort in. So I'm going to say here, I expect that to take 6 hours. I would like to get that done today, and if I know who's going to do the work, I can select them from this list. Otherwise, I can jump into my resource assignment wizard to go and find the most relevant resources. So if I click on search, that will do a filter and pull back everyone that I have a role record for in Mission Control, and I'll be able to see their full availability. So I can scroll down and see each person that has a role record within Mission Control, and I can see their availability for the week as well. So it's assuming I'm doing this action because I'm creating it, and you can see it's telling me that I'm over my limit. So what I can do is I can see Chris has got plenty of time, so I can drag Chris down here, and that will automatically take the time off me and put it onto Chris. Now, for the sake of the demo, I'm actually going to leave myself as the owner, but what I'm going to do is pull in contributors, so people that can help me do this work. Now, before I just go and grab anyone from this list, I'm going to search for them up here. So first of all, I know I need someone on the consultants team. I'm going to be looking for someone with this skill and this skill. I can even search based on skill proficiency as well. So do a new search. That will reduce the number of people that I'm looking at, and anyone that's left, I'll know that they've got the capability of doing that work. So if I scroll up, I can see Amy's got plenty of time. So what I'm going to do is pull Amy down here as a contributor, and of my 6 hours, I'm going to get Amy to do 2 of them. I'll also pull Carey down, and basically between the 3 of us, we'll be doing 2 hours of work each. Now, that's my action built out. Underneath my action, I can also build out my checklist items, which is an optional feature, but I'm going to click in here, and putting it into context of designing these wireframes, I might need to design a homepage. So I'm going to get that done myself. We might also need to get a content page done, and I'll get Carey to do that. And one more, we might need a contact us page done, and I'll get Amy to do that. So I can also add in notes against any one of these, but you'll see this becomes that to-do list of things that we need to tick off. So then I'm on to my next action, which is going to be to design the UI. That's going to be 8 hours. I'm looking to get that done tomorrow. Now I'm just going to assign that to an individual resource rather than giving that to through the resource assignment wizard. And I'm just going to quickly finish off all of these actions now. Okay, so we've got all of those actions ready to be created. So just before I click on create, I'm just going to talk about a few email notifications. So I mentioned earlier the daily digest. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So this is an email that comes out to each person in Mission Control on a daily basis. So this is an example that's come to me. It's telling me today I've got 3 actions to work on. There's 28 hours of effort remaining. I can see a detailed list of the 3 actions, what projects they relate to, and what my involvement is. I also get a list of anything new that's been assigned to me in the last 24 hours. I can see anything that's coming up for me to work on in the next 5 days, as well as seeing a list of anything that is now overdue. If I have anything to approve in this system, I also get a summary of that here as well. So this is giving me a snapshot summary of everything that's going on inside Mission Control from my perspective. Now, this comes out on a daily basis, and in my business, I have my digest set up to come out at 5 o'clock, so it's in our inbox ready to start the day. Obviously, you can see it's 12 o'clock here now, and we're asking these people to start work on this action today. So what I can do is actually tick this notify box, and that will send an immediate email to them, letting them know that they've got that new action. And this is a quick snapshot of what that email will look like. So it gives me a high-level summary and then the detail of the action. So what project it relates to, when it needs to happen, who's working on it, what have we got to do, and how much time have we got to do it in. Okay, so I'm just going to click on create, and all of those actions, checklist items, and contributors will be created. And that will be our entire project built and ready to go. So now that we've got our project all built out, let's take a look at what we've got available to us. So on the project, we have access to our project overview, and it gives me access to all of these different sub tabs. And again, like the console, I've got the ability to hide these from individual people, or if we decide we're not going to be using a certain feature, we can hide it from everyone. So walking through, if I take a look at my insights, that's going to give me access to a snapshot summary of what's going on the project. So I can see the budget, I can see how many actions I've got, if anything's been completed, do I have anything overdue, are there any risks, who the owner is, and then how are we performing against things like budget, hours, profit and loss, and invoicing. So if I click through onto the overview page, I get again a couple of charts which I can choose to hide if I don't want them there, but I can also see the details. So I've got my 3 milestones. I can drill into a milestone and get down to my actions. I can drill into the action and get down to those checklist items. So I've got full visibility of the entire project plan right on this one page. So for the action, I can see the owner. Obviously, I'm responsible for that. I can see it hasn't started yet. It's due today. So we're getting some red flags, and I can see how much effort has been done or left to do. And I can access that resource assignment wizard if I need to pull in additional resources. If I hover over that, that tells me who's actually working on this action with me. So we're going to come through to some of these other tabs as we get through the demo. But first of all, we're just going to take a closer look at the Gantt chart. So the Gantt chart loads up and shows me the overall project timeline. I can see my milestones and the deadlines that we set, as well as taking a look at the individual milestone actions as well. Now the Gantt chart is fully interactive, so you're able to drag and drop to reschedule individual records as required. You could also pick up an entire milestone and reschedule everything on that if you needed to. You can also create dependencies between these actions. So it's just a case of dragging and dropping from one action to the other to create those relationships. Now, there's a couple of benefits in putting those relationships in place. So once they are there, you'll see that if I now reschedule the parent, anything that's dependent on it will automatically reschedule by the same period of time. The other benefit is as soon as the parent action is marked as complete, anyone involved in the child action will receive an immediate email notification letting them know that they can start work on their action. And that's just a quick snapshot of what that email looks like. It basically tells you that your predecessor has been completed and here's the detail of your action that you can now work on. So some additional things that I can do, I can actually extend the duration of actions as here. So while I thought that was going to be done in 1 day, it's now going to take me 2. I might also expect that framework to take me 2 days as well. So as I'm doing that, I can start to extend that, and anything that's dependent on it will automatically reschedule by the same period of time. And you can see as soon as I've created a critical path, my relationships have flagged up red, letting me know that I do now have a critical path on my project. Now I can edit these in further detail as well. So if I double click into any of these actions, I can access all of these key fields. So for example, if I mark that off as a high priority item, when I go back, you'll see it gets flagged up as red. If I click into this one and mark it medium, it gets flagged up as amber. So just giving us a visual indication of important actions on the project. Now I can also edit my milestone as well. So while I'm here, I'm going to actually set this up for billing, which we'll take a closer look at later on in the demo. So what I'm going to say is when I complete my milestone, I want to raise an invoice. And I've agreed with my customer that I'll be invoicing them 3.5 of my $6,000 budget. Now, what I can also do is actually add in additional records directly on here as well. So if I click on the plus sign, that's going to allow me to add in some new records. So I'm going to say I forgot to get an action for client approval. I'm expecting that to take 6 hours. I'm just going to get that done myself, and I'm looking to get that done by Friday. So I've made a few different changes there. So I'm going to click on save, and that's going to commit all of those changes to the project for me. So what we're looking at here is the project, the milestones, and the actions. Now, if you remember, we added in some checklist items, and we can load those in as well. So just by ticking this button here, I can get visibility of the underlying checklists within an action. So I can have full visibility of the entire project on the Gantt chart. What I can also do is actually turn on or off my baseline days. So you'll see if I turn that on, I get this ghosted version of what my original project timeline looked like. So I can see, my design wireframes was delivered when I thought it was, but I thought I was going to do my UI in 1 day, ended up taking me 2, and I can see how that's impacted the delivery of the rest of the project. So I can use that as a lessons learned process going into future projects to see if I can adjust my schedule. We also have the ability to export the Gantt chart as a PDF if we're wanting to share that with customers. Now, as well as looking at the Gantt chart for an individual project, we also have the ability to look at it for multiple projects in context of one another. So all of the functionality from the Gantt chart we've just taken a look at is still available here. So we can drag and drop to reschedule, create dependencies, all of that stuff. But the benefit is I'm able to view multiple projects alongside one another. So here's I have got one project. Scrolling down, you can see I've got multiple projects in view. Now, obviously, there is a lot of information being displayed here, and I can collapse that if I need to. So just clicking on this button here, it's going to remove my actions from view. So I'm now just looking at projects and milestones. Click it again, I remove the milestone, so now I'm just looking at the project. So I can zoom in or zoom out to the level of detail that I'm interested in looking at. So we're now going to take a look at a few features within Mission Control that help us keep on top of logging progress in the system. So one of those tools is the whiteboard. The whiteboard is a Kanban interface. It displays all of our actions as individual sticky notes, as if they were stuck to a whiteboard in the office. And we can see what current status they're in. So we can see planned, in progress, on hold, complete, and so on. So this shows us we have 72 actions in plan. There's 345 hours of effort remaining. 35 in progress, and so on. So the concept of the whiteboard is you're just dragging and dropping actions from one column to the next to update the status. Now, looking at the cards, I can see an action number. I can see links to my action, milestone, and project. I've got start and end dates, hours scheduled, hours completed, and completion percentage. Now, the top 4 fields are static, but you can choose what's important to you down here. So, for example, let's say I don't want to look at completion percentage. I would like to look at something else. So I can click on my settings tab here, and instead of completion percentage, what I might choose to look at is my priority value. So making that change, that will go away and update all of my cards. So instead of showing me the completion percentage, it will show me the priority value. And that's a persistent setting. So every time I come back to the whiteboard, it's going to remember that that's what I want to look at. Now I'm currently using status as my columns, but I can change that up here. So for example, if I select priority as my column heading, it's going to remove my status values and it will give me my priority values instead of high, medium, and low. Now same principle applies. I'm just able to pick these actions up, and now instead of changing the status, I'm changing the priority value. Another example might be that we go to action owner. So that will remove high, medium, and low. It will give me a new set of columns, one for each individual person, and I can see all of the work that's been assigned to each team member. Now I can see Carey's got 9 actions, Chris has only got 2. So if I try and even that up a bit, I can just drag and drop these over, and that will automatically reassign that work off to Chris for me. Now I don't have to come to that view to reassign work though, so I'm just going to drop that back to status. And while that's loading, I'll draw your attention to the right hand side here where we can see a big list of everyone that we have a role record for in Mission Control. And again, we have the ability to filter down like we did on that assignment wizard to find people based on team membership and skill set. But I've got this action on hold that's currently owned by Carey. Now if I know Blake can do that, what I can do is actually just simply drag and drop Blake over there, drop him onto that, and that will transfer that off to Blake for me so I can move that back into in progress. So right now we're looking at all actions on all projects. However, I can filter this down as well. So what I'm going to do is actually just apply a filter here. Now you'll see I've got a number of different options that I can choose from. So for example, I could come down and say, show me anything that I am the owner on or where I am a contributor. So basically I could say, I could use that as a filter to show me only things that I'm responsible for. I do also have the ability to save any of my filters so I can quickly come back to them. What I'm actually going to do is just select the project that we've been working on here today. So apply that filter. So that's going to remove everything else from the board and only show me the 7 actions that we've created. So looking at the card in a bit more detail, I've got my end date warning letting me know that my end date is approaching. I can see a summary of my checklist. So I've got 3, I haven't done any yet. I can see that I'm the owner, and if I hover over here, that will show me that I've got people helping me on there as well. Now, if I'm looking to collaborate with colleagues on Chatter, I can click that button and that will open up the Chatter feed for me. What I'm able to do here is collaborate at the action, milestone, or project level. I can also get through to my checklist items. So if I need to add new items or I want to start ticking existing ones off, I can do that from here. And what I can also do is actually log my time. So if I click on the clock, that gives me one of 2 options. I can come along and click start. Then that allows me to go off, do my work, come back and click stop, and that will record the time for me. Alternatively, I can report on what I've already done. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to say I've started work on initial designs, and so far I've done 2 hours of work. So click log time, that will go away, create the time entry, and it will automatically move the action to in progress to save me having to move that over because it now knows that I'm working on it. Another way of logging time is via the timesheet. So as I mentioned earlier, the timesheet will load up for an individual person for a particular week, and it will list all of the actions that have been assigned for that person, whether they're the action owner or a contributor. If they're scheduled to work on them this week, it will appear in their timesheet. So for each action, we can see the project and milestone. We can get through to chatter. We can get through to the checklist items. We can mark the action off as complete, and we can see both billable and non-billable time that is scheduled, completed, and remaining. And then we can see we can log time across each day of the week, entering notes as well. So there's the 2 hours that we just logged from the whiteboard. Now, if we want to add more time to that, we could say, well, we've done another 3 hours, so we're going to change that to 5. We're also going to double click into that to log some notes. So I might also log some time against some of these other actions. So I might say I've done 1 hour here and I did 2 hours there. So as I'm scrolling down, you can see I get totals for each day. I can see both billable, non-billable, and holidays, as well as the total, and also the total for the week. So if I'm happy with that, I click on save, and that goes away and saves all of those individual time entries. Now, if I need to make any changes to any of that, or I want to remind myself of what I've done during that time, I can just click on the information icon, and that will show me the breakdown of those hours and what days they were on, and all of the details behind it. Okay, so that's using the timesheet. We can also log time via our calendar converter. So the calendar converter will preload any Salesforce events as well. So these are Salesforce events, and these are actions on my projects that have been scheduled to be worked on at specific times of the day. So I've got the ability to log time by clicking on the action icon. That will allow me to make that into a time log on that action. I've also got the ability to convert Salesforce events into time logs on projects. So I can click into that and then look up the project, look up the action, and then log my time. So as well as converting Salesforce events or logging time against actions already on my schedule, what I can do is also drag and drop to create new time logs. So if I say I've just done 3 hours work here, I can associate that to an individual project. And again, linking it to the relevant action, put in my notes and log my time. So then if I am approving other people's time and I have a time to approve, I'll need to click onto my approvals tab. And on the left, I see the individual people that I have to approve time for. So I'm going to click in to view the time logs I need to approve for Chris. I can see each individual entry, when they happened, what notes they are supporting that. I can get through and ask him some questions via chatter. And if I'm happy, I can approve everything or I can reject as required. So next we're going to take a look at the scheduler. So the scheduler is our resource planning tool. And it basically lets us see how much work has been allocated to each person on the team. So down the left-hand side, we'll see a list of everyone that we have a role record for in Mission Control. So if I scroll down, I've got a big long list of people, and across the page, I can see a timeline of 2 weeks, and hovering over, I can see all of the individual actions that have been assigned to each person. So if I hover over this one, here's the action on the project that we've been working on today. So I say I'm looking at 2 weeks, but I can expand these settings, and using this slider, I can adjust how many weeks I'm looking at. So it might be that I only want to look at 1 week, or I would like to look at 3 or 4 or 6, whatever it might be, right out to a 12-week period. So if I'm trying to assess who's got the capacity to take on the next project that comes in, I can come here and take a look at that. I've got the ability to move backwards and forwards a day at a time. I can also jump forward and say, right, we know we've got a big project starting in February. Who's got the availability to do that? So I'm going to drop that back down to 2 weeks and just come back to today. So on each individual person's role record, you specify how many hours per week they work. So on my record, it's set to be 32 hours. So over this 2 week period, you can see I've got 64 hours available to me, but I've been given 92 hours work to do. So I'm overutilized. It's flagged up red that there's a bottleneck on me as a resource. So what I can do is actually drag and drop this work off to other people. But before I do that, I want to make sure I'm going to give it to someone that's capable of doing it. So again, if I expand these settings like I did on the assignment wizard, I can filter down and find people based on the right team membership and the right skill set, making sure I'm only going to be looking at people that are capable of doing the work I'm looking to reassign. So now I've got a much shorter list of people. I can comfortably go off and give this work off to my colleagues, knowing that they've got the capability of doing it. So I'm going to drag that off and give that to Andrea. So as I do that, my hours come down and hers go up. So the aim being, I'm looking to get myself back in the black just by reassigning some work. So I'm just going to drag a few of these actions off. And once I've got myself back in the black, you can see my bottlenecks removed, haven't caused any issues for my colleagues. So if I'm happy with that, I'm going to click on save, and that will transfer that work off to my colleagues for me. Now, whilst I'm within my capacity for this 2 week period, I might have some bottlenecks during this time. So to check that, I can jump into this hours view, and that will show me how that work's been distributed. So I can quickly see where my bottlenecks lie. So I can obviously see I haven't got a huge amount to do this week, but I've got a really busy day on Monday. So could I potentially pull some of that forward or push it back? Or if it's got to be done on this day, I know I've got people here that are already, I already know they're on the right team with the right skill set, and I can see they've got some availability, so I could go off and give that work to them instead. So we're now going to take a look at logging expenses. So there's a number of ways of logging expenses. You can do that from the Salesforce mobile app. You can do it from the utility bar down here. What we can also do is from the progress pad, we can click through and log expenses. So I'm going to say I'm submitting expenses on behalf of Chris. I know I need a couple of expenses too, so I'm going to add some extra items to the list. I'm just going to select, look up the project that they relate to. So just copying that down onto each expense. And then in terms of categories, obviously you can put your own values in any of these fields, but I'm just going to say that was accommodation, that was entertainment, and that was travel. I'm going to say they've all occurred today, and this was $200, and that was hotel stay for client meeting. Submit that. This might be $50, lunch with client. Mark that as approved and make it non-billable. And then instead of an amount, I'm going to say I've just traveled 65 miles. It's picking up my mileage rate and travel to meet client. Submit that. So I'm able to submit a number of expenses there. So that goes away, creates all of those expenses for me. So now what we're going to do is just jump back onto our project, because since we last looked at this project, we've logged some time, and we've also logged some expenses. So before we take a look at these tabs, I just want to talk about this trackpad. So the trackpad is basically a collection of utility tools that allow you to perform quick actions on your project. So for example, the timeline will show me everything that's been going on my project. So I can quickly catch up with what people have been doing. I can actually mark the action off as complete if I tick that box there as well. If I click through to the feed, that's going to show me the chatter feed at the project level. So again, able to quickly collaborate with colleagues. I can also log time like I did on the whiteboard. I can log expenses. I can add new actions, risks, or issues. So since we last looked at the project, we've logged some time. So let's take a look at the time logs tab. So this is going to give me access to two charts. So my burn down chart shows me two things. The blue line shows me the ideal delivery effort. The purple line shows me the actuals. This shows me a summary of how many hours were scheduled, what's been completed, and what's remaining. So I can see there I've gained an efficiency because it looks like I'm going to be delivering this in 35 hours where I'd scheduled to do it in 36. And as I scroll down, I can see all of the individual time entries and who's been doing what. Clicking through onto the expense tab, again, I can see the list of expenses, what status they're all at. I can see a summary here on the approval status. I can see what categories the expenses have been allocated to and how we're performing against our budget. Now, clicking through to risks, we haven't put any risks on the project yet, but if I want to, I can click through and add a new risk on there. So I'm going to say here, I've just had a call from the client and they're concerned about the budget on the project. We've just found out about this today. It's an increasing risk and we're just going to add in some notes. So client advised they may need to reduce the budget. So in terms of assessing that risk, we can allocate it to a category. So I'm going to say that's financial. Proximity, we're going to find out about this in the short term and what impact would that have. So obviously if I've got less money, it's going to have a high impact on the project. And unfortunately, probability, the client does think it's going to happen. So then what areas of the project might that impact? So I can select as many as I think relevant and move them over to the right hand side. And then what can I actually do about this if it does come off? So I could have a reduction countermeasure in place and agree to reduce phase 1 scope. So if I add my risk in there, that gets added in. So now if I refresh my risk tab, you can see the risk gets plotted onto the matrix based on probability and impact. I can see a summary there, and then I can get down to the detail of the individual risks here as well. So if we are wanting to track issues, we can do that via our issue log. So obviously we don't have any issues at the moment, so there's no charts being displayed. But if I scroll down, I can start creating new issues. So I'm just going to assign these to myself for now. So in context of building this website, let's say we've just found a bug on the home page. And to quickly add that one in, we've also got a contact us page not working, and about us links broken. So quickly adding in new issues, you can see my charts are starting to populate, but then I can start getting in and putting in a bit more detail here. So I can double click into one of those, any one of those to start editing the record. So I'm going to say, okay, well, this is a waiting review, it's a bug, priority is high, when did we find out about it, and so on. So basically just adding in some more information to help people resolve the issue. So then obviously charts getting updated, and as we're working through each one, we can get through to the detail and also collaborate with colleagues on Chatter. Now, in terms of invoicing, I'm just going to click on here to show you that this is all empty because we haven't yet created an invoice. Now, just to remind you, we'd set our project up to be milestone billing. And when we complete the design milestone, we want to raise an invoice for $3,500. Now, if I was working through the project properly, I would mark all of these offers complete, which in turn would then mark my milestone offers complete. And then that would in turn raise my invoice. Now, what I'm going to do is actually just going to jump through into the milestone and mark that off as complete manually, which will then raise the invoice for me. So that's been done. So now if I click through onto my related list, come down to my billing events, and I can see the invoice has been generated. So I can see it's an invoice, its draft status, it relates to this project, invoice number, due dates, and the amount plus my tax. If I click through to the related list, I can see my line items. So I've got one line item for the completion of the design milestone. So then if I come back to the billing event, so within the next minute or two, it's going to generate a PDF for me that I can send to my customer. But I'm actually going to just jump in and view that manually now. So the invoice gets generated, obviously pulls in your details, your logo, your customer's details, and then the information relating to the invoice, how much is owed, and then how they pay. So now that that's been generated, if we go back to our billing event, you'll see that it's automatically generated this URL. So that is a shareable link that you can send to your customer, and they will automatically be able to receive visibility of that invoice. So I'm just going to quickly click in and send an invoice. I'll just send it to myself. It's a predefined template there. So I'm just going to send that. So once the client receives the email, they can see the summary details, and then they can click the link. Now they don't need to have any login details to Salesforce or Mission Control. They're simply able to preview the invoice and download it for their own records. So back on the back within Mission Control, let's say the customer has now just paid that bill. So what we're able to do is come in and record that payment. So we're going to create a new billing payment record. We're going to just say it was full payment. It happened today. It was for the full amount, and our reference was XYZ. So receive that money in. So back up on the project, so the invoice gets marked as paid. So now when we take a look at the billing tab, we'll see our charts are being populated. So we can see we've got an invoice for 3.5. That's in a status of paid. We can see our total budget for the project, what's been invoiced, what's left to invoice, of what has been invoiced, has it been paid, and then we can get down into the detail. So looking at the invoice, drilling down into the line items and the payments. So we're now going to take a look at a few higher level features within Mission Control. So first of all, we're going to go to the management pad and take a look at the PMO dashboard. So the PMO dashboard comprises of two tabs. You've got the PMO and the revenue recognition. So we're going to take a look at the PMO first. So I'm able to load in some data for this week. Now this shows me how my projects are performing to budget and schedule. So my CPI is my cost performance index. This tells me how I'm running to budget. My SPI is my scheduled performance index. That tells me how I'm running to the timeline. Now, if this is 1, I'm delivering perfectly to budget. Above 1, I'm doing even better. Below 1, not so good. So you can see I'm doing really well on my budget, not so good on my timeline. So what I can do is actually drill down into the individual projects, get down to the milestones, into the actions, and figure out where we're going wrong and who we might need to go and speak to try and get this back on track. Now I can also load in a comparison data set. So I can say, show me how I'm performing this week against how I was running last week. So you can see I've actually made a good improvement on my budget, and whilst I'm not out of the woods yet, certainly looks like we're heading in the right direction on the timeline. So this would be something that you'd be looking at on a weekly basis, just to keep that real high level view of how things are performing. So from the revenue recognition tab, we're able to load in some data. So I'm going to just look at a shorter period here and load in that information. So this gives me insight into how I'm recognizing my revenue and my profit and loss throughout each period, which I can look at weekly or monthly. So I can drill down into the detail here. So I've got each period, and I can see which projects are being worked on during each period. And for each period, I can see my scheduled effort, my actual effort, and my projected effort. So across the whole project, across all of my projects, I can actually jump in and see where that revenue is being recognized and how it's comparing to actuals and projected. Now I'm also able to look at my revenue recognition at an individual project level. So if we just go back to the project that we've been working on, we can jump into the RevRec tab, and that will just preload that information purely for this one individual project. So I can now get it down into each period, and I can see, based on the schedule, how that revenue is going to be realized over the duration of the project. So another high-level feature is the role utilization. So again, back on the management pad, I can get through to that role utilization report. So this is a tool that lets me look at individual people or members of a particular team. So I can come through, select a team that I want to look at, and then look at their utilization over a period of time. So for each person, we can see how many hours per week they're meant to work, how many hours they have worked, and we get the breakdown of whether that was billable, non-billable, or holidays. We can see their overall utilization across each week, as well as their performance against their individual billable targets. So I can see who's been performing well, who hasn't been performing well, and then I get a summary of everyone that I'm reporting on here as well. So a great way to make sure we're utilizing all the people on the team effectively. Now, another feature we've got is the cloning process. So rather than building out a brand new project from scratch each time, I might have a template that I want to use every time I do a new website. So let's say I've just sold another website. I'm not going to go through the process of building it out from scratch again, but instead I'm going to go to this project and make a copy of it. So the cloning process will open up the new project in draft mode. So I can now put in a new project name. I can make changes, obviously linking it through to the relevant customer, making changes to any of these key fields. If I scroll down, you'll see it pulls in a copy of all of my milestones and actions. So there's design, build, and deliver that we built earlier with all of the underlying actions. Now I can also choose to clone checklist items, and I can also choose to clone my contributors. And you'll see it's assuming I'm starting this project today, but what I can say is I'm actually not starting this until the 21st. So reset that and update all of the dates on the project. So now the first action, if I scroll down, will be scheduled for the 21st, and everything else has been scheduled accordingly, keeping the lead time between the actions from the original project. So in a matter of a couple of clicks there, I've been able to initiate a brand new project using an existing one as a template. So we're now going to take a look at what features we have available to us to assist with that program level. So I've already got a program in my system, so I can access my program planner via the management pad of the console. So the program that we're going to take a look at is the roadmap of what we're going to try and get done in mission control. So I'm going to click in here. So this is just an example where I'm visualizing what I want to do across a roadmap of a series of projects. So all being part of an overarching program. So it starts off, I've got my backlog and my priority backlog, and I can quickly start adding in new requirements that I want to get done within this program. So I'm just going to start adding in a few examples. So I can quickly say, well, I would like the system to have a Gantt chart. I would like it to have a timesheet. So I can quickly keep adding in new features as required. So as I do that, I can start moving these into my priority backlog as well. And as I'm building up a bigger and bigger backlog, what I'm going to want to do is actually work out when am I actually going to deliver these requirements. So what we can do is start associating projects to the program. So we've got two options here. If we click on this upload button, I can either associate an existing project or I can create a brand new one. So I've already got some projects here. So I'm going to be doing a release in April. So I'm going to load that one in. So that will associate that existing project to this program. So then I might want to add in another one. And again, I've got another release planned in August, so I can start assigning what I'm going to get done there. And then finally, if I want to say, well, I'm looking to get another release in, but it doesn't exist yet. So what I'm going to do is just quickly create a new project directly from here and associate that to the program. So as I do this, I can say, well, I'm going to get my Kanban done in the April release. I'm going to get my Gantt chart done in the August release, and so on. So I can quickly start adding in some additional things here as well. So I'm going to say, well, I also need to get a scheduler. We want to be able to do invoicing. We want to log expenses. We want to have an action pad, issue log, risk log, and so on. So you can then start working out, okay, well, this is everything we're looking to try and get done. And within each one of those, we can actually click in, we can start adding more detail at the requirement level. We can go and add in individual user stories to support what we're actually trying to achieve in the requirement. So basically, as a developer, I want to be able to see individual tickets so that I can know which one to work on, and so on. So the idea being we're just dragging and dropping and working out what's going to get done within each project. So now that I've got my requirements assigned of the new features that I'm going to get done in this release, I can actually then go through to my project and start building that out. So what we're going to do is now jump back onto the console. On the management pad, you'll see we've also got access to our project builder. So I'm going to go through to the April project. So I've already pre-configured my project to have some milestones. Now I've structured my milestones to be individual sprints here. So clicking on my requirements, I can see the backlog of requirements that I've got. So what I can do, I can either start creating actions in any of these milestones directly, or I can start converting my requirements over here. So I'm going to say, right, I'm going to get the Kanban done in sprint 1. So what that will do is actually convert that requirement into an action on my project. So I'm also going to say, okay, well, we can get the risk log done in sprint 1 as well, and then we'll be looking to get the issue log done in sprint 2. So then you could be adding in new features here as well. So I might say in sprint 3, I'm looking to get the PMO dashboard done, for example. So the program planner and the project builder are 2 pages that will allow you to manage that long-term roadmap, as well as building out the detail of what you're going to get done within an individual project. And the final thing I wanted to show you was the action pad. So from an individual person's perspective, or looking at an entire team, what you can do is use this action pad to get to a list of the information that you're looking to manage. So you can see here it starts off by loading all of my actions. I'm going to apply a filter here, and I'm only going to be looking at stuff that I want to be working on. So the filters load up, and I can choose from any combination of these. But what I'm going to say is I'm looking for anything where I am the action owner or where I am a contributor. So basically, that's going to give me a list of everything that I need to be responsible for. Now I could also say show me anything where it's got to be done. It's got to be done by this week. So apply that filter. So that's now reduced the number of actions that I'm looking for. So I get some summary charts, so I can see how many actions I've got, how many's been completed, what's overdue. I can see the total number of hours, what's been completed, what's left to do, and then of my checklists underneath my actions, what I've got left to tick off. So then scrolling down again, I've got the ability to quickly create new actions here as well. I can get through to all of the individual records. I can collapse my detail section, so I can see here I'm obviously responsible for all of these, but I've got people helping me here, so I can quickly jump in and see who's helping me on those. I have the ability to click through here to log time as well. Now, if I want to get through to any one of these actions, I can come along and select an individual action. So I'm going to click on that one. So that's going to populate the detail section over here, so I can get through to the actual record. I can go and collaborate with colleagues using using Chatter, and I can also get through to my checklist items as well. So if I need to tick those off as and when we're working through them, we can do that here as well. So the action pad is a great place for an individual person to come and see a one-stop shop of all of the actions that they need to focus on. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully that gives you a good sense of some of those high-level features. And we haven't gone into a huge amount of detail of every single individual feature, but hopefully it demonstrates the level of functionality that Mission Control does have to offer you. Now, if you do have any questions, by all means, we would love you to get in touch, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for your time today. Bye.